Hi. I haven't actually spoken to the camera for a really long time, so if I'm even more awkward than I usually am, because I'm very awkward in front of a camera, then do excuse me. I've got a lot of videos to film before the end of the year, so hopefully I can warm back up to the camera again, because I don't think I've actually spoken to the camera since July, and it's the 18th of November today, so that's a really long time. So today I wanted to talk to you about doing commissions and some little tips, probably tips, could I call them that? Tips that will help you along the way to be able to create a better commission and to get through it a little bit more smoothly. The first thing that you need to be able to make a great commission is a brilliant reference photo. The types of commissions that I do are usually pet portraits or family portraits, and I usually deal with clients over the internet, so whatever they send me is that's what I've got to choose from. So you need to be able to stress to the client how important it is to have really good lighting in the photo, because I might have that problem now actually, because this room is really dark, but basically when you're taking a photo in low light it makes it grainy and then you can't pick up the details. So the best sort of lighting for a portrait would be natural light. So if you can suggest to the client to take the photo of their pet or their family member in natural light, possibly through a window, not in direct light but in nice even natural light, that will give you the best detail in order to produce a portrait similar to the types of portraits that I do, which tend to be on the quite realistic side of the art world. So when you're talking to the customer about the types of photos that you want, they will tend to, in my experience, they will send you their favourite photos. You need to be able to get it across to them that their favourite photo isn't always going to be the best photo for a portrait, and that is just something that you will learn to judge as you get more experience. Some examples from my experience: people have sent me holiday photos or photos taken around the holidays where they've taken photos, say in the living room at night time with a lamp on in the background, so they're just so grainy and completely impossible to work with. And I had one lady send me a photo of a husband that she wanted a commission done of, and he was literally probably about this big, and it probably doesn't mean much to you because this is through camera, but this is maybe 2 centimeters big, and it was a full body of him at night on holiday, like way in the distance. And that was, when you get sent photos like that, it's quite difficult to be able to communicate to the client that there's nowhere near enough detail in that photo for you to do a realistic portrait of them. So that's something you've got to be really careful of, because you don't want to offend anybody. So you want to be able to put that across in the best way that you possibly can. So once you've got the photo that you want to work from, that you're happy with, it's all lit nicely, the details there, it's really nice and crisp, the next thing that I've found that clients really appreciate is you being able to give them a visual idea of what the portrait's going to look like when it's finished. So the way that I do that is just editing it, doing a really quick edit of it in Photoshop. So most of my portraits are like head and shoulders on a white background. That's just the standard portrait that I usually do. So I'll just crop the photo and put it onto a white background, and then make any quick little colour adjustments that I'd need to do just to make it look as nice as possible. If you can do that for them and then just save it at quite a low res just to give them an idea, then they'll really appreciate that. And then you can also figure out the composition and just make sure, double check that they're going to be perfectly happy with exactly how it's going to be laid out. Another benefit to that is that you also know exactly what it's going to look like when it's finished, so it saves you trying to figure out the composition on the paper, possibly damaging the paper in the process and leaving marks on it where you don't want to be. If you can figure all of that out on the computer before even touching the paper, then that will work better for you as well. The next thing you need to do is the traditional side of it, I guess, the physical side of it. You need to start putting pencil to paper. But one of the most important things about creating a portrait for somebody, in my opinion, is the canvas that you're working on, what type of paper you're going to use. Because when I first started doing portraits, and this wasn't for clients or anything, just when I was practicing, I had no idea about different types of paper. So I was drawing on printer paper, which is really, really thin. So if you make a mistake and you rub out, it damages the tooth of the paper, and sometimes you can get holes in the paper. So that's something you really want to look into and try out different types of paper and see what you like working with the most. I tend to favour quite thick paper because I don't want to accidentally crease it or make a hole in it or damage the top of it at all. Because pencils, when you're working in pencil, you tend to use the pencils when they're quite sharp, so you don't want any possibility of the pencil damaging the paper either. At the moment I'm using 2 different types of paper, but they're both by Fabriano Artistico, I think that's the name of the brand, or it might just be Fabriano. One of them is a watercolour paper, and then one of them is just a draft paper, and they're both different colours. One's more of a white paper and the other one's more of a cream paper. One's a little bit thicker than the other. It just depends on the portrait and what the client wants. Sometimes they can also be particular about what colour the paper is that you're working on. So you might want to work on grey paper, blue paper, brown paper. There are all sorts of different colours of paper that you can use. I tend to just work on white paper. That's just the easiest when it comes to highlights and things. But the customer might want a certain tone of paper, so just make sure that you clear that up with them straight away. In terms of pet portraits, one of the most difficult things to render, in my opinion, are whiskers. So what I used to do is I used to cut out, I would work around where the whiskers are and then just try and render them right at the end. But that is extremely difficult. So I would leave the white of the paper and that would be the whiskers. But for this portrait in particular, I decided to try out a new technique. So in order to create a little bit more depth, I just drew the portraits as they were and forgot about the whiskers right until the end. And then I actually painted them on, which I think gave it a little bit more depth. And I do actually quite like mixing medias. So if that's something that you're struggling with doing pet portraits, is whiskers, because I've seen that so much. And when I first started doing pet portraits, I did so much research trying to figure out how these artists were rendering whiskers, and I found that they were all quite evasive when they were asked that question. They didn't really want to give away the secrets, but that's 2 ways that you can do it. You can mark out where the whiskers are, but very, very carefully, because if you get any pigment on the paper, if you're working on white paper, and if you get any pigment on that paper at all, it will mark it, even graphite. So you can mark around it and then just keep that part of the paper really, really clean, or paint them on afterwards. I have tried using a white gel pen, but the way that the ink flows in the gel pens that I've tried isn't smooth enough. So it ends up a little scratchy. So acrylic paint, I use just white acrylic paint over the top. Works quite well, I think. So that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helped you. Like I said, these are just a few things that that I didn't know when I first started doing portraits and doing commissions for people, that would have been helpful for me to know at the start. It would have saved me a lot of time, so hopefully I've saved you a lot of time as well, or at least a little bit. Anyway, like I said at the beginning, I've got a lot of videos that I want to get out of the way before the year is over, so I'm going to try and upload 2 videos a week. One Saturday night and one Sunday night. So I'll see you, this should be going up tonight, which is Sunday. So I'll see you next Saturday for another video. Bye!